Do you ever stop and wonder, where does money come from? Who creates it? And why does it seem like we never have enough? This question might seem simple, but the answers reveal one of the most complex and powerful systems controlling our lives. This video is a deep dive into how money works in today's world. We'll explore the systems behind it, the implications for everyday people, and how this affects the global economy. And by the end of this video, you will not only understand how money is created, but also how this shapes your financial decisions and future.
Opportunity.
No, money. It's no money. Let's get started.
Watch me get this paper. All about the Benjamin sediment dropping in the pavement. Now you see me, then you never.
Today, central banks all around the world are printing money at unprecedented rates. But here's something to think about. We've always been told that money is hard to get and that we need to work our whole lives just to earn it. So, how can all this money just appear out of nowhere? Yet, most of us never question, where does it really come from? How is it made? Money is at the heart of everything we do, from buying groceries to building businesses. But how much do we really know about money? Why does it feel like there's never enough of it? And who decides how much is out there? In this video, we will look at 3 ways money is created and how it affects all of us. We'll also uncover the real reason why the rich keeps getting richer, why many other people struggle just to get by. And by the end of this journey, you will not only understand how money works, but also gain actionable insights to navigate these systems. Let's start with the origin of physical money. You see, money wasn't always digital. Its story starts with coins and paper notes created by government to facilitate trade. The government doesn't make this money directly. Instead, it's usually done by places like the central bank or the Royal Mint in England. But here's something really surprising. Physical money like cash and coin is only a tiny part of all the money in the economy. In many countries, this accounts for only 3 to 8% of all the money in circulation. This cash is mainly created to make sure that banks have enough money to meet their obligations when you need it. You know, like when you withdraw cash from an ATM. Let's use a $100 bill as an example. It costs the government approximately 9 cents to print a $100 bill. That means the government makes about $99.91 in profit from each $100 bill. This profit is called seigniorage, and it helps the government reduce taxes and pay for other things. So you might be thinking, if money making is so profitable, why doesn't the government just print a ton of cash all the time instead of taxing us to death? Well, the answer is inflation. When too much money is printed, it becomes less valuable. Think of it like this. If someone had $1 million, but that $1 million could only buy a loaf of bread, would it still feel like you're rich? This is what happens during inflation. Inflation is when money loses its buying power over time. If it gets out of control, money can become worthless. And this is not hearsay. This has actually happened in places like Argentina, Zimbabwe, and Venezuela. For example, in Zimbabwe, the price for 1 loaf of bread will cost you 35 million Zimbabwean dollars. While in Venezuela, people were literally using their money to make handbags and drawings because it wasn't worth anything anymore. Money works like a yardstick for measuring value. But if that yardstick keeps changing in size, it becomes difficult to actually know what things are truly worth. For thousands of years, gold serves as a steady yardstick. Its limited supply made it a reliable way to keep government in check and ensure money had consistent value. But in 1971, President Richard Nixon announced that the United States will no longer convert dollars to gold at a fixed value.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
This changed everything. Money became elastic, meaning its value can change depending on how much is printed. And since the United States is the world reserve currency, this decision didn't just affect the US, it affected the whole world. Despite all this, you would think the government would limit how much cash they actually create. Well, most of them stopped printing paper money but found other ways to create money out of thin air, as you will see later in this video. And they are just as surprising. The second way money is created is through digital money and private banks. Most of the money in the world today is created by private banks, not governments. In fact, 97% of all money in developed countries is digital, meaning it only exists in computers, not as coin or cash. This makes most of the world money controlled by private banks. Because this form of money is not physical, banks are able to create more deposit than they usually had, and these deposits are based on two things: loans and debt. The idea of using debt as money isn't new. It started in England back in 1704 when the government passed a law called the Promissory Note Act. A promissory note was just a piece of paper that said you promise to pay back the money you borrow, kind of like an IOU. For example, if someone borrowed $100, the promissory note is issued saying they owed $100, and this note could be treated like real money. Today, this same concept is used in digital form. Debt, like a loan from a bank, works like money when people trust that it will eventually be paid back. Banks are allowed to create and use debt money to lend to others. This means they can create and destroy money by giving out loan and collecting payments. Almost everything in the global economy is based on these promises to pay back loans. It's a system built on trust and the idea that debt can act as money. So let me explain it with an example. This is exactly how debt becomes money. When you borrow money from a bank, something interesting happens. The bank doesn't give you the money it already has. Instead, it creates new money. And here's how it works. Let's say you want to buy a house for $1 million. The bank types in $1 million into its account as a loan. And now you owe the bank that amount as debt. This debt is a promise to pay it back with interest. That $1 million didn't exist before. It's brand new money that the bank just created. And when you buy that dream house of yours, the seller gets that $1 million. They can spend it on other things like buying a $600,000 Rolls Royce or putting down a down payment for another renovation. This way, the money spreads within the economy and gets used over and over again. But here's the key. In our system, debt and money are almost the same thing. For the bank, debt is an asset, which is something valuable to them because they will earn interest. For you, it's a liability, something you owe. This is the infamous double accounting system. It sounds almost complicated, but the main idea is this. When a bank gives you a loan, it's not always someone else's savings, as we often think. Most times, this money, they just create it just for that loan. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because once you paid back the loan, the debt disappears and so does the money. But the interest you paid stays with the bank as their profit. The bank always wins. We've talked about loans, but what about the money that you deposited into a bank? Well, when you put your cash in a bank account, it might surprise you to learn that that money really isn't yours anymore. The bank legally owns that money. And here's what they do with that deposit. The bank keeps about 10% of your deposit in reserve to meet withdrawal demands, and they can lower the remaining 90% to someone else. That person might deposit that borrowed money into another bank, and then that other bank loans out 90% of it, and so on and so forth. This process is called fractional reserve lending. If you've ever been told your money has been transferred, it's not exactly true. No physical money is moving around. What we call a deposit is just a bank keeping a record of how much they owe you. That number in your account isn't cash sitting in a vault. It's more like an IOU from the bank. Using a fractional reserve lending, a single $100 can end up creating $1,000 in total money circulating in the economy. At least that's how it used to be. However, as one of the many responses of COVID, on March 26, 2020, the Federal Reserve removed reserve requirement for banks. Banks no longer need to hold any percentage of your deposits as cash in reserve. They can loan it all if they want to. This essentially gives banks unlimited freedom to create money. But it doesn't just stop there, does it? Banks don't just loan out your money, they also use your deposit to make risky bets, often with the help of hedge funds. They invest in complicated financial tools like derivatives and securities. These are like bets on whether something goes up or down, like stocks, bonds, or even the weather sometimes. And then this gambling can also get out of hand, and this kind of risky behavior played a very big role in causing the 2008 financial crisis. It's a system built on huge bets, and when those bets fails, the impact can ripple through the entire economy. And now, let's talk about one of the most extreme ways money is created: quantitative easing, or QE for short. QE is a system where the central bank creates brand new digital money and use it to pump money directly into the economy. It was first invented by the Japanese central bank in 1989 and became widely known during the 2008 financial crisis when the US Federal Reserve used it to stabilize the economy. Here's how it works. During times of crisis like the 2008 financial crisis or the COVID pandemic of 2020, the central bank creates money and uses it to buy things like loans, bonds, and other debts from banks and large corporations. The goal is to inject money into the economy to keep it moving. You see, in 2008, the US faced a financial crisis so severe that major banks and corporations were on the brink of collapse. The government argued that saving these institutions, and sometimes called bailing out Wall Street, was the only way to protect ordinary people on Main Street. This plan involved creating $700 billion through quantitative easing to buy off bad loans, like those loans from subprime mortgage crisis. While this helped stabilize the economy, there was a catch, right? All these debts got added to the government's tab, meaning the public ultimately had to pay for it through taxes and inflation. And at the time, people thought QE would be a one-time emergency measure, but it didn't stop there. Over the next decade, QE has become a regular tool for pumping up the economy. For example, in 2020, during the COVID pandemic, the global economy was brought to a standstill as businesses shut down and people lost their job. To prevent a total economic collapse, the US Federal Reserve launched another massive round of QE, creating trillions of dollars in a matter of months. This money was used to buy government bonds and corporate debt, ensuring that financial markets stay afloat and businesses could survive. Again, while this helped stabilize the economy during a tough time, it came at a cost. This newly created debt was added to the government's already massive balance sheet, meaning regular people like you and I will have to pay for it through higher taxes and inflation. To really understand how massive quantitative easing is, let's look at the US national debt over time. From 1776 to 2008, it took the United States more than 230 years to reach less than $1 trillion in debt. However, by 2014, just 6 years after the 2008 financial crisis, that number skyrocketed to 4.4 trillion. And during the 2020 COVID pandemic, things escalated even faster. In just 3 months, 3 trillion was added to the national debt. And over the last 4 years, an additional 5 trillion has been added, bringing the total to an extraordinary level. Today, the central bank can create hundreds of billions of dollars in just hours, well, maybe minutes. However, as more money is printed, the impact seems to be less effective, raising concerns about how long this approach can continue without major consequences. When central banks create money out of thin air and pump it into the economy, it does have serious consequences. And one major issue is that it distorts reality, especially in the stock market. In the past, the stock market used to reflect the overall economy. If businesses were thriving, the stock market would grow. If businesses struggle, the stock market will slow down. But that's no longer the case, because today the US stock market is almost twice the size of the entire nation's GDP, which doesn't really make any sense. This disconnection is largely due to the central bank intervention. For example, in April 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, 30 million Americans lost their job. Yet, the stock market had its best month since 1987. Why? Because the central bank printed trillions of dollars, lent it to banks and hedge funds at almost 0% interest, and that money flowed straight into the stock market. And why the financial markets soared, the real economy, where people work and earn, was left behind. When the government prints a lot of money, it will inevitably lead to inflation. But in 2020, during the pandemic, the inflation wasn't obvious right away. Instead of groceries and other everyday items getting more expensive right away, asset prices such as housing and stocks skyrocketed first. This made the rich who own a lot of houses and stocks even richer, while those who don't own these assets fall further behind. This growing gap between the wealthy and everyone else is as a result of something called the Cantillon effect. When money is created, the first people to receive it, usually the banks and hedge funds, and the wealthy, benefits the most. They use this money to invest, increasing their wealth. By the time this money trickles down to the rest of the economy, inflation has already raised prices and the value of that money has dropped. Since the 1980s, the wealth of the richest peoples have been tied to the stock market, and their fortune have grown by 420%. After the 2008 financial crisis, the stock market became dependent on the Federal Reserve. The more money the Fed prints, the higher the stock market goes, and the richer the top earners become. So, what does this all mean for you? While we can't change the system overnight, there are steps you can take to protect yourself and make smarter financial decisions. Number one, diversify your assets. One of the best ways to safeguard your financial future is to own assets that aren't tied to debt, like gold or Bitcoin. Gold, for example, has been trusted for centuries because no one can simply print more of it. Countries like China and Russia have been de-dollarizing and buying gold in record amounts for years. While gold has been a trusted store of value for centuries, Bitcoin offers unique advantages in today's digital world. Its accessibility to anyone with an internet connection, easy to transfer, and isn't controlled by any government or bank. What's more, Bitcoin is gaining serious credibility with the creation of the Bitcoin ETFs from the likes of BlackRock, Fidelity. Over 60 companies, including Tesla and MicroStrategy, have added Bitcoin to their treasury, treating it as a valuable digital asset. Even countries are starting to notice. El Salvador had made Bitcoin legal tender, and other nations are exploring building out Bitcoin strategic reserve. This shift shows that Bitcoin is becoming a key part of the global financial system. Number two, educate yourself. Knowledge is one of the most powerful tools you can have. Understanding how money works can make you have better choices about saving, investing, and navigating the financial markets. Start with the basics. Learn about how money is created and how it flows through the economy. Explore the role of central bank and how their policies like quantitative easing affect inflation and asset prices. Dive deeper into emerging technologies like Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Learn how they work, their risk, and their potential as an alternative to traditional money. Because by educating yourself, you are not just gaining information, you are empowering yourself to take control of your financial future. This knowledge can help you spot opportunities and avoid pitfalls, giving you the confidence to make more informed decisions. Number 3, invest in productive areas. Don't just follow the crowd when it comes to investing. Instead, focus on industries and businesses that create real lasting values. Sectors like innovation, clean energy, education, manufacturing are not only essential for building personal wealth, but they also play a vital role in strengthening the overall economy. Now is also an important time to pay attention to political changes. With the US transitioning to a new president, government policies will likely shift, and these changes can have a big impact on the sectors that thrive. For example, if the new administration prioritizes clean energy, which they want, industries focused on solar, wind, and electric vehicles could see significant growth. Alternatively, policies supporting infrastructure development might create opportunities in construction and advanced manufacturing. By researching the president's policies and understanding the administration priorities, you can make more informed decisions about where to invest. Knowing what sectors are likely to receive government funding or government support can give you a major advantage in positioning your investment for growth. One of the most memorable quotes about money and banking is usually attributed to Henry Ford. He said, "It is well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before money." The way money is created and distributed shapes every aspect of our life. It influences our economy, our opportunities, and even our future. By understanding this system, you can start to navigate it more effectively and demand changes that benefits everyone. So, what do you think about our current monetary system? Do you believe it's sustainable, or is change inevitable? And if you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notification for more deep dive into topics that relate to money. Shout out to one of the earlier creators and inspiration of this video, Code Fusion. I'll leave a link to his video in my description. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.